Are you really here?
My two daughters just asked you that one question that's very important, and I want us all to reflect on it. Are you really here? Consider this. According to the 2025 Brookings Institution report entitled The Disengagement Gap, Why Student Engagement Isn't What Parents Expect, it was found that 39% of the 10th graders that responded to that survey say that they do feel like they belong at their school most of the time. Now, while that is a powerful statistic, what's even more important is the flip side. This means that 61%, nearly 2 out of every 3 of our high school 10th graders, reported that they don't feel like they belong at their school most of the time. Now, compare that to this. According to the 2025 Gallup State of the Global Workplace Report, 62%, again, nearly 2 out of every 3 of our employees report feeling disengaged at work. Now, with this same 2 out of 3 correlation of disengagement, I'll feel it's safe to say that our disengaged students are becoming our disengaged employees. And for those of us who truly study the data on disengagement, I'll have to ask you all again, because I know that you're in here, but are you really here? Now, for me, you can just call me Cousin Kenny. On paper, I'm Kenneth Allen Basham III, a human resources specialist who specializes in integrative wellness. Now, please, don't throw any tomatoes, okay? I know I said HR, but for those of us here, I will not be talking about any policies. Today, I'm going to talk about presence. And when we really study the data on presence and disengagement, the global reality is that simply 2 out of 3 of us here are disengaged. And in the professional realm of human resources, we use one word to identify these types of silent disengagement. That one word is presenteeism. Now, for those of us who don't know, presenteeism is simply the condition of us as humans showing up physically like we all did today, but mentally, emotionally, socially, we are effectively disengaged once we get here. And throughout this talk, I want you to keep this in mind about the presentation of presenteeism. See, it is a sneaky, silent, and virtually invisible thief to public engagement, professional productivity, and even private presence. Now, for me and others that I've encountered, the onset of presenteeism can begin as early as elementary school. See, look there. That's elementary school Kenny. You know, the kid up front right there with the golden top hat and the $1 million underbite. Now, they didn't let me keep the top hat, but the underbite is mine forever, all right? Well, as you can tell, as a youth, I attended a public magnet school for the performing arts. So standing on stage and delivering a speech or even performing wasn't anything new to me. Yet, by the age of 7, it was determined that I was a strong candidate for the condition of macroglossia. Now, for those of us who don't know, macroglossia is simply an abnormal enlargement of the tongue that can affect your breathing, it can affect your speaking, and it can pose many other oral complications depending on the degree of enlargement. The treatment? Well, that can range from speech therapy all the way to surgery. Yes, tongue surgery. Just imagine someone telling your 7-year-old self, hey, 7-year-old kid, we may need to cut out some of your tongue because it's just too big. No, hold on, wait just 1 minute. Cut out my tongue because it's too big, hold on. Trust me, before I knew anything about a tummy tuck, I was a strategic 7-year-old doing anything possible to avoid having a tongue tuck, okay? Now, thankfully, the speech therapy was the only route I needed to help me grow into my oversized tongue. But that was only after the identity fracture of being labeled as socially challenged had already set in for me. I had effectively become what the Brookings Institution identifies as a classroom passenger, not because I got bad grades, not because I exhibited bad behavior, but only because now I was faced with the choice of whether controlling my tongue would be a bridge to my success or a barrier to my advancement. See, in this talk, I like to define presenteeism this way. Presenteeism is the identity fracture that invites all of us to realign. And please truly hear me out here. It invites us to realign our three subtle T's. These three T's are our thumbs, our toes, and our tongue. Now, if you thought that was a lot, even less than 2 years after completing those sessions of isolated speech therapy, even family misfortune would try to chisel away even further at my fractured identity. See, my father, my best friend, the exact man whom I'm named after, was taken away from my family at the hands of his own brother. Just imagine going to sleep as a 10-year-old boy on a night of Friday the 13th of all nights, being shaken awake out of your sleep just a few hours after midnight on Saturday the 14th, being demanded and commanded to rush to the hospital with your mother, only to get there and receive the news that your father didn't make it. That level of instantaneous grief as a result of family violence, of course I had questions. What family? What identity? What trust? And those were even just more reasons for the detachment, the disengagement, and the fractured identities that precede presenteeism. Now, even in spite of that tragedy, I didn't immediately choose to disengage. Instead, just a few hours after receiving that new reality of being forced into fatherlessness, I chose to play in my recreational league basketball game. In that game on that Saturday, the 14th morning, I only scored 4 points. But my team won by 2. And what that means to me, that type of math, means that I absolutely had to show up. And that's why I say this concerning presenteeism. Presenteeism is an open invitation for all of us to recover untapped potential. See, we all get the invitation to engage. A lot of us choose to show up to the party. But there are some of us who choose to show up that just get stuck on maybe when it comes to engaging. I know we've all gotten this. How many of you have received the invitation, whether it be online or in person, that says, will you be attending this event? Yes, no, or maybe. Well, for the classroom passengers and the professional presentees, they always select maybe. For me, I was the type that would select maybe to an event, actually show up to the event, and once I get there, still in my mind the entire time, question maybe. Maybe I'll engage. Maybe I'll speak. Maybe I'll even like it. Maybe, maybe, maybe. How many of you can identify with that type of behavior, those questions? But here's the pivot to the whole matter. We no longer need to live our lives only in the maybes. See, the one true power we have, even through our thumbs, is we have the ability to self-invite. And let's be completely honest about this. If we don't welcome engagement, we will never walk with engagement. And that's the one word I needed to hear, the one word I needed to speak, and the one word that I needed to fully embody in order to overcome untapped potential. That word was welcome. That word, as you can see, it took me to serve in orphanages in the heart of Africa. It took me to serve in my community locally as an emergency medical technician. It even led me to standing here before you all on stage today as an award-winning speaker and spokesman for minority representation in STEAM and the sciences. See, we all have the ability to realign these three subtle T's. And no matter what nation I found myself in, no matter what representation or what occupation I found myself in, the truth always remained. Cognitively embodied wellness is and was always welcomed. So if you remember nothing else from this talk today, please remember this. Remember that presenteeism is the identity fracture that invites all of us to realign our three subtle T's. Perhaps for you, it could be your toes. I like to call them our scouts of sincerity, looking for R&B. And no, I'm not talking about rhythm and blues. I'm talking about representation and belonging. Remembering that if we don't welcome the engagement, we will never be able to walk with it. Or maybe for some of you, it's in controlling your thumbs. You know, saying yes to that invite. They're our digital directors. And I like to say this, all of our hands will tell a story, but it's our thumbs that control the show. Or perhaps for some of us, it could even be our toes. It can be our tongue. Remember, it can behave as a bridge to your success or a barrier to your advancement. And unless you keep it untucked, you will never be able to share your pearls with the world. So if we can circle back around to that initial question that my daughters asked, are you really here? I'd have to say that prior to today, many of our answers would have been a silent no. At best, a masterful maybe. And that's what makes the issue of presenteeism such a pressing concern. Not because it's an occupational wellness phantom, but because it is a silent epidemic of disengagement that's costing us financially, is draining us emotionally, and is disconnecting us socially all at the same time. So if you would allow me to answer that question for myself, are you really here? I would have to say that there are two things that I know for certain. Number one, you all chose to be here today and engage, and I'm truly thankful for that. And number two, so did I. And see, that's the beautiful, wonderful, welcoming ripple of return that makes productivity possible, belonging available, and our presence purposeful, just like it did here today at TEDxWilsonPark. Thank you.